you again, and it's been a long time, and we've just had a little bit of time hanging out. And I have to do this video to let people know about this thing that I'm doing, which is it's actually sort of a big step for me, and something that you've done a lot of in different kinds of ways. And as somebody who knows about my work and who knows a lot about the different fields that I work within, I thought it might be nice to just have a conversation with you to talk to people about what this is.
I'm excited for you that you're teaching a retreat.
Yeah?
Yeah. And so what's the basic theme of the retreat?
So I'm calling it Origins. And part of this idea of origins for me is about bringing together these different kinds of work that I'm doing with Gestalt psychotherapy, with yoga, and with meditation practice. But in particular, I think that the kind of focus is working with these developmental movement patterns. So I have studied with this woman in New York, Ruella Frank.
I remember that.
Yeah, and
I remember you talking about like rolling around on the floor and learning how to stand up and move around.
As if for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? And so as if for the first time, and we talk about that in meditation, right? Doing things as if for the first time. And then in this work, we're also looking at how there was a first time for us. And that actual first time of experiencing that standing up or rolling or pushing away the food that we don't want or pulling towards us something that we do want in our lives is actually something that we've already experienced and is still present with us today in the way that we move and we relate.
It's like everything that has happened in our past is encoded in our minds, but also in how we move. So are you going to unpack that like in a yoga class or while people are meditating, or how will it be structured?
Yes.
Like in what way, like how will it be structured and how will people use the structure to sort of uncover these origins?
Right. So one of the things that came to mind for me as I thought about my own experience in healing, and as you know, I've spent a lot of time in therapy myself, but I also spent a lot of time in yoga. And then I've done a lot of meditation practice and still do, and retreats have also been really important. And so I started to think about that, psychotherapy wasn't it for me. It wasn't only it. And so in terms of being a psychotherapist in my day-to-day life here and working with my clients, I recognize that there are times when I really want to bring to them the teachings and the practices that I have a depth in, and to support that work. And that's not necessarily what's offered. So a lot of times you might get something where maybe you do an intensive therapy or maybe you do an intensive yoga retreat, and there's a workshop offered in this or in that, and you have to synthesize it. But I think what I really want to do is I want to bring to people the synthesis that I've been doing.
Right.
So
you're like, I've investigated this territory and I've kind of mapped it out in a way that I can sort of guide you through these different practices, even though you're going to have your own experience.
Yeah. That's what I would hope to do. And I think in particular, there's a lot of things that it might mean when somebody says, oh, there's yoga, right? And so there's a lot of different kinds of yoga that are going on and different types of intentions. And the same with meditation too. So a big part of my practice has really been in the therapeutic end of meditation and of yoga. And so what I've been interested in is how does this actually fit in your life, as opposed to how do you fit yourself into it. And so then...
So it's not like when you go to a yoga class and you're supposed to fit into some template of the postures the teacher wants. It's going to be more about discovery or exploration or tying it into a kind of more internal awareness.
Yeah, so That's a really good point. So that's a really big piece in Gestalt. And it's something that's actually held me back a little bit in doing something like this kind of synthesis, because in Gestalt, we really value what is called experiment. And experiment means that you try things out to see what happens, to bring things to awareness and to work on them, to bring them to light so that we can work on them. But when we teach something, when we teach a system or a technique, we tend to be doing things in such a way where if you do this, you get this result. And a lot of people want that, they like that idea. But in reality, it doesn't fit us a lot of times. So, my intention is to do practices that actually build and develop on each other. And what I noticed when I was doing the kind of Gestalt work in this somatic way that is looking at developmental movement and looking at how we hold ourselves more than just like what we think is going on in our lives, I noticed that people actually need more time in feeling their bodies. We're dulled out, we're numbed out by technology, by the structures of our cities and our societies and our families. We're desensitized in a lot of ways. And I think that's why people are so attracted to yoga and why they're so attracted to meditation, is that it's getting that in touch feeling.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's like in a moment in psychotherapy where you say to someone, can you just stop there and just tune into how that feels in your body, or do you notice how your body might have changed? In a retreat setting, you can kind of stretch that time out for much longer and explore, rather than just like feel that for 20 seconds.
Right.
But check what that's like in your body through a whole day of different kinds of practices.
Right, absolutely. So, that reminds me so much of, what in Buddhist communities we know, but also like in addiction recovery communities is also known as this idea that it's actually really hard to seep the kinds of, to sort of take in the kinds of changes when your environment is so much a part of perpetuating them. So, the whole idea of going on retreat and doing something that's really quite extraordinary, like it's really out of your everyday life, is about having that kind of container of care and boundary and support to do something that could allow that to happen. But then of course, there's also the piece of, and we see this a lot with retreats, is, how do I bring that back into my life? And so, I think that there's a reason why people who are doing therapeutic work also want like things that they know how to do and that they can feel. And so,
it's like they want to be able to feel, and they also want to be able to use that as a kind of emotional skill or communication skill or proprioception skill, or they want to do something with it.
Yeah.
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 So they're going to get both. The
Yes.
investigation and also the skills.
Yeah.
The tools.
Yeah.
That's profound. I don't want to say that that's absolutely, but it is. That's an amazing thing to offer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thank you. It's as I say, like I've wanted to do this with a certain amount of care and respect, because all of these traditions are really full in themselves. And so I always want to, be conscientious of that, and it's not really about fusion, And I think that in terms of my practice, there are times when people would like some of those other areas that I offer, other than my sort of Gestalt grounded psychotherapy practice. And this, I feel like, is the way that it could be done. One that's like sort of stretched out in terms of having a day, having a meal, swimming, feeling the environment, creating a community.
Sign me up.
Yeah, so, it does feel like a really big leap, going to Greece. And, I know you have a connection.
Yeah, I just spent time in Greece, and I've been there many times, and there's something about the land, the water, and the people, and food, that is really good for practicing in a way that's not totally introverted, because it's so beautiful. You know, like sometimes you go somewhere in the snow and in the dark and it's like only for this kind of activity. It seems like it's a place where it's like 50-50. You're learning how to keep your awareness like in your own experience, and also like to acknowledge how beautiful the culture and beautiful the place is. So it seems to be the perfect place to do this kind of work, because this theme seems to be a little 50-50.
Right,
Like
yeah.
turning inward and also making sure the work that you're doing inward has an application relationally, and also in this crazy world we're living in right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that, you know, we may go on retreats and deepen, and we might deepen with ourselves, and deepen, you know, in our yoga practice or in our meditation practice. The Gestalt work and the therapeutic work is really looking at the relationships and how we respond to each other. And so I think that, you know, while in yoga and meditation we might be learning to balance our nervous systems, sometimes when we take that into relationship, that's gone.
Yeah.
And so I you know, there's something about being able to go back and forth and to have these kind of build on top of each other. And as you say, in an environment that actually is about coming out, you know, and I think, you know, what I know of Greek culture is mostly about the Greeks that I grew up with in Toronto. But one thing that I experience about Greek culture is like a really innate and, you know, very old tradition of how to connect.
And dialogue.
And dialogue.
Yeah, how to dialogue. Yeah. It's the heart of democratic, the democratic spirit.
Which, you know, is something that I really think is important to steep in and remind ourselves of and connect to, so that we can bring that back to our community and feel strong about